Hello, party people. Welcome to Behind the Business by 3.5. My name is Atara, and I have the honor of sitting with a phenomenal guest of the day. He is both an artist and an executive. He has been both behind the camera and in front of the camera. He is currently serving as the SVP of Creative at Republic Collective and Federal Films. Everybody, please show some love in the chat for Devon Libran.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Love the intro.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
How are you doing today, Devon?
Doing good,
I'm
doing
doing
good.
so good. So sorry for the lag. I'm still catching up to things. But yeah, it's finally hit summer solstice. It's really hot over here in New York. I know you're in LA. How are things over there?
It's a brisk 65 today out here. It's actually kind of chill. Yeah. Sorry to break that to you.
65.
That's why I'm in a sweater.
We're sweating at a confident 95.
Yeah.
Um, but I everybody who is so elevated in the business. Um, it's really fruitful for me to always know where you started.
Oh
So
yeah.
I want to ask you, just to jump into things, when you think of the genesis of your career, where do you start?
Well, the true genesis was really how I spent my summers. So I grew up in Oakland, California, and in the in a time where if you don't have something to do with yourself, you could find a lot of trouble. And so my mom's strategy was she was always going to make sure that I had something to do. And every summer I did something different. Sometimes I did a science camp. Sometimes I did something with arts. Sometimes I did music. But one summer in particular, she signed me up for an acting workshop, and I just caught the bug. I really just enjoyed live performance. I enjoyed the energy of bringing a story to life, and that's where I knew somewhere along the lines that I wanted to be involved with creating and telling stories. And that was the first little thing for me. And I started doing local plays. There's a company called Opera Piccola, and we would do different plays and we would travel, and that was really the thing that really got me started to feel like, wow, I really want to be a storyteller in some shape or form or fashion.
That's really cool. Do you feel like, I don't know much about the Oakland scene, so do you feel like that really impacted how you kind of transformed as a storyteller, like Oakland itself?
Absolutely. Oakland is a very eclectic area, and the Bay Area in general. I spent time in Oakland and Richmond, and there's a lot of creatives that come out of there. So even if you look at Star Wars and you see the huge, spaceships and machines, a lot of those were inspired by the shipping docks in Oakland. And then you have the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge, and you have so many communities. And so my upbringing was so diverse. I got to meet so many different people. I got to talk with Panthers. I got to talk with politicians. I got to learn about socioeconomic policy, a lot of things from a very young age. And it was just a part of where I grew up. And, being a kid in Oakland, you kind of have to learn a little bit about everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I really get that. Kind of really gaining knowledge on all different forms of craft so that you know how to apply it to what you want to do moving forward. Now, I heard that you've done a multitude of things, such as public speaking. I know you've done film. Um, how did you eventually land on acting is the thing that I want to pursue? This is the thing that it's my heart, you know?
That's a very great question. So when I started acting when I was young, I got a little bit of taste of it. I had no understanding of the industry at all. I didn't understand what a casting director was. I didn't know what a demo tape was. Occasionally my mom would take me to open calls, but I didn't understand how the business worked at all. And around that same time was when I found sports. So once I started playing sports, that was my only focus. That was the only thing I cared about. And fast forward, 15 years, once my athletic career ended, I found myself asking this internal question, which is, what am I just as passionate about? What am I most passionate about? And the only thing that I could think of that brought me that same level of joy and excitement and energy was acting. So I was like, all right, well, if that's the thing that's inside of me, if that's what my gut is telling me I need to do, then I just need to figure it out. And so I had a professor at the time by the name of Ron Burglas. He told me like, hey, this is a new age. I don't know where you should start, but you should at least start working on your craft. So he just started having me practice, and then I went to a place called AIP, and they had little workshops that you can meet casting directors. And just like every time I got on set, every time I did something, every time I was able to get in front of the camera, I'm looking around. What's that person doing? What's this person doing? And every time I just wanted to learn more. And it all just started with me asking myself, what am I most passionate about? And it was acting. It was very clear. It wasn't, any confusion. It was acting.
Yeah, making that commitment to being a creative is so vulnerable, and it's so to be honest, brave. We don't talk about it enough,
Hmm.
but we genuinely commit to just exposing and expressing our inner self, our inner child. Um, so that's a really beautiful story. Now, you did touch on being an athlete. I so I went to school for theater as well, and I knew quite a few people who balanced both being an athlete and being an actor, being an artist. And I know that that wasn't easy. So when you finally, I think, fully committed to being a storyteller, did you ever go through any phases of like imposter syndrome, or like I don't know what I'm doing, do I even belong here, and what was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on it so much, because to commit yourself to being a creative, if you want to be good and if you want to be great, you're committing yourself to bringing a piece of you to every project you do. If it's a short film, if it's uh, a documentary, if it's a feature, if it's a music video, if it's a cut down, if it's a lyric video, like whatever you're doing, you're having to put a piece of yourself in it. That's what makes that thing special. That's what makes people want to work with you. That's what makes that thing your thing, right? So you have to give a piece of yourself every time. You have to give a piece of yourself every time. And eventually you kind of start to worry, like, am I bringing enough? Am I enough? Did I not get that role because I wasn't good enough? Am I only getting this for another reason? And imposter syndrome is very real, because you have to be vulnerable every single time. The best creatives, the reason why we love their art is because it feels personal. It feels real. That's, the human spirit is something that's very hard to fake. And so you're left in a space where you're doubting, right? You're constantly doubting. And the way that I kind of battled that was, you kind of have to ask yourself two questions. Why am I here? So what did I do to get here? I obviously did something to get here, right? I had to do some type of level of work to get here. What am I doing to get here? And what am I going to do about this feeling, right? Because ultimately, imposter syndrome, it's a negative thought. It's negative self-thought. So you're thinking in your head, oh, I'm not ready for this, or I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't have this opportunity. So then first you got to negate that with a positive thought. You got to kill that. Okay, no, I am here for a reason. Then you need to double that, right? Because now you're neutral. Then you need to double that with another positive thought, which is, I've done the work to get here, or I know I'm ready to be here. I'm going to continue to do the work to stay here. Whatever it is to get you through that moment, you have to double that negative thinking with even more positive thinking.
No, absolutely. Was there ever a moment where you felt like you hit a point where you're like, I belong here, this is it? No more doubting myself, no more questioning it, no more imposter syndrome. I'm here.
Honestly, it was very early. The first
Mm.
time I got on a really big set, one of the first movies I was ever in was a film called Red Tails. And it was a massive budget. It was a long list of actors. If you guys look at that film, it's amazing list of actors. And the moment that I got there and I saw how big the set was and how big the moment was, I'm like, I'm here. I'm here and I gotta run with it. Whatever time to doubt yourself is too late. If you're there, if you're in that moment, that's the last time to be doubting yourself. You're already there. So that was really where I started to let that go. And honestly, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about where I am. I don't spend a lot of time thinking like, oh wow, this is a big moment. I just continue to aim to be present in whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm going, any situation I'm in, what's in front of me right now. And that's the only thing that I think about.
Staying present is something that I'm still working on. Um, I'm such like a forward thinker. So hearing about how you when you're there, it's just important to just be there. You know, my mom, she's always pressing it into my head, like just be in the room.
Hmm.
That's the best thing that you can offer for yourself. Um, so to hear that being, reinforced and is I think everything I needed to hear. Um, so I want to kind of pivot a little bit. You are the SVP of Creative at Republic Collective. That's major.
Yeah.
What what at what point did you know that you wanted to get into music?
So I've always had a passion for music. I've always enjoyed it. And it was one of those things that would come to me naturally. And I feel like in your life you have these moments where if you trust your gut, you'll never go wrong. So I might be hanging out with some friends and they would say, "Hey, we're about to go to the studio." Now again, you could say no or you could say yes. So I'm like, "Yeah, I'll come be there and hang out with you guys." And then you're sitting down, you're watching something, and then someone's like, "Hey, I want to show you a music video." And then you watch it. And so every time that I had an opportunity to either lean into the world of music or lean against it, I always leaned in and it just kept getting deeper and deeper. So early in my career, once I started acting, I started looking to find other things that I could do to be creative. And so that led to writing. And from writing just naturally led to producing because you got to get your stuff made or you could wait for somebody to make it for you. So that kept happening, that kept happening. And eventually somebody would say, "Hey, I'm working on a music video. Would you like to come, be a PA?" Yeah, sure. I'll come check it out. And then I did that enough and they were like, "Hey, you want to be a second AD?" Yeah, sure. I did that enough and it just kept repeating itself and every time and there was times that the project or whatever it was didn't feel right and I was like, yeah, I don't think this feels right. But I just every time I kept asking myself, is this something I want to be doing and should be doing? And every time, music just kept getting deeper and deeper and I found out that I was getting better at the work that I was doing and that was really reaffirming.
So the term creative is so broad, at least for people who are not in music.
Yeah.
For Republic, specifically Republic Collective, Republic Records, it means something very specific. So I want to ask you, can you let our amazing viewers know what is creative? What does
Yeah.
that mean?
To me, creative is vision. So if you think of anything in the world that's been created, anything, this couch, the logo behind me, the AirPods that you have in your ears, somebody had to visualize it first. They had to visualize it first and then create it. That's always the steps in the process. I can't think of something that was created without a vision, and if it was just an act of God or something because the most amazing things that we have, somebody had to have the vision to create it. So our job as creatives in the creative department is we need to understand the artist's vision and what they're explaining, where they want their music to communicate, what they want people to take away when they hear a song, what they want people to take away when they see a visual, when they look at a physical piece of media, artwork, vinyl, if they look at a poster. All of that has to come from a clear vision. So to me, creative is either helping define the vision. Some artists have a very clear vision and you need to execute it. and other artists want you to be a part of helping craft that vision and build it out with them. But at the end of the day, is creating the vision and being part of that process.
Yeah. Is there any project that like really stood out to you that you've worked on in the past?
Most recently, you actually just sat down with her. Working with Cynthia was an amazing process, and we got to sit down and work with her early. Our entire creative team, Eddie, Julie, Emily, Sophia, really everyone that got their hands on the project, and we got to understand what her vision was. And she trusted us to bring her ideas. She trusted us to say, "Hey, this is what we think it could be." And it was a very strong two-way dialogue that we got to sit down and talk about what her vision was. And the same thing with Kid Cudi. He's another artist that has a very specific vision of what he wants, but you can talk to him, you can bring him ideas, and you can say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I think, where we're going." Those are the two most recent ones, but honestly, every artist that I've been fortunate enough to work with here, their teams have been amazing. Ariana's team is amazing. She has a very clear vision and knows how to get there. I mean, it's a long list. Obviously, everybody loves Abel the Weekend. Everyone loves his vision, and that's anytime you get to do anything on that project, it's always something special. And like I said, I could really go down the roster. Like every project is special, and to be able to, even if all you're doing is making an ad asset, the fact that you're being trusted with that opportunity, that's huge. You could just be working on a lyric video for one of those artists. The fact that you're getting trusted with the opportunity is huge. It's similar with The Warning. They're another group that it's a two-way street. It's a two-way conversation, and I just love really everybody that I get to work with.
Yeah. When you sit down with these artists and they're starting, with their big ideas, what's one of the first questions that you ask? Because you want to really be able to get a full scope of their vision.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of build that relationship with them to also understanding what they're hoping to create?
One of the first things I ask is when somebody listens to this album or they interact with this album in any type of way, right? Any form of media, what do you want them to walk away with? If I sit down and listen to your album, how should I feel? How should I feel about myself? How should I feel about you? How should I feel about the world? What is your mission for how you want people to receive this project? That's always the first question that I want to know is what is your mission for this project?
Mm, that's cool. And I say that because sometimes creatives will have really, really big ideas that may not translate well
Yeah.
how they're trying to put it out. So having that trust, having that bond with that artist is really important because you might suggest something that's left field of what they originally intended.
Yeah.
What is that like, having to kind of extend your hand and be like, hey, I'm not trying to squash your vision, your dream, but trust me on this. Like,
Yeah.
what is that like?
So the biggest tool that I've utilized in that situation, and it's something that I was told way back in grad school about just communication, is that you should seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if you're hitting a point of conflict, really with anybody in your life, I always want to figure out what am I not understanding about this. Because sometimes if you're having that creative conflict, or you guys aren't on the same vision, or you guys aren't on the same path, a lot of times it's what my understanding is completely different from yours. So an artist might say, I want this to be mysterious. I want this to be dark, right? Those words are very left open to the imagination. They're left open to your own perception. So I need to go deeper to figure out, what do they mean by mysterious? What do you mean by dark? I need to understand. I need to go a little bit deeper to understand what specifically you're trying to get at. And you start asking questions like, what about mysterious? Is it the unknown? Is it the mystery? Is it a mystery that plays out? Is it a mystery that you never answer, right? You have to keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper into what that understanding is. And then once you have that understanding, Then now I know where they're coming from. Then that's when I'm seeking to be understood. So now I understand where they're coming from. So I say, okay, I hear you. Now this is what I think when I hear mysterious. Is it that we have two different definitions? Maybe we need to be using a different word, and that's where it's throwing us off. But let's find that common word. Let's go back to our mission. Let's go back to what we said we wanted this to be, and then let's explore how do we get towards that thing that describes what we're both talking about.
Yeah. And that, like, searching for understanding is so important. I know, at least for the artists, to feel understood is extremely important. Because also their projects are their babies. They're
Oh yeah.
sensitive about it. You know?
Yeah.
So, especially, and I do want to touch on this because it is Black Music Month, especially for Black
Yeah.
artists who have something very personal, very specific that oftentimes, and I feel like we're in a good like renaissance of creativity going on right now, where Black artists are seeing more of themselves
Yeah.
in the light. So it's there's a lot more comfort in being brave and showing themselves off.
Yeah.
I want to know what that dynamic is like to still, sit across from specifically Black artists who are like, hey, I have something brave that I want to say and I want to show it,
Yeah.
but also it needs to communicate, How do you go about that process?
Um, similar to how I described, I need to understand why this message is important to them. I need to understand why this is something that they're like, nah, this is my story. This is what I need to get out. This is why I want people to hear this, right? And what I always say to people is that at the end of the day, like you touched on, it's gonna be the artist name and face that's on this product. So yeah, I might be in the back somewhere, whatever. I could put it up on my Instagram that I help with this, but at the end of the day, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, it's gonna be that artist's name and their face on whatever that is, and they have to be able to stand by it. So if it's something that they feel like they can stand by, and they feel like this is encompassing the story that I want to tell, then I'm here for it and I support you. And if I feel like, hey, as somebody that you trust or as somebody that you're working with, yes, you may think this is the message that's being presented, but this is how I'm receiving it. I hope that at least they'll hear me out, and perhaps that might require a small tweak. Perhaps that might just require a small conversation. But as long as we're in a space that we can talk about it, and you can express to me how this is making you feel, and I can express to you how it's making me feel, then it's something that we both could stand by and be proud of.
That's really beautiful. I really like that. Um, yeah, okay. So the other thing that I want to kind of touch on is that oftentimes people think that you have to choose between being a creative or a businessman or a businesswoman.
Mm-hmm.
You clearly handle both well. So what was that like? What is that like, one, when you really started pursuing, more of like a business executive
Yeah.
pathway? How do you still balance still being a creative?
That's a very good question. So I kind of knew early on. I knew much sooner how I wanted to be perceived creatively, well before I understood where I was gonna be professionally. Once I started creating and writing and acting, I had very little executive background. I was just creating. And so I went to school. I went to grad school for leadership and management because I knew that that was where I was lacking. And so in the back of my mind, I knew, okay, I know this creative side is strong, but I need to develop this other side of my mind because I never wanted to be in a situation where I couldn't speak to both sides. I never wanted to be in a situation where I couldn't sit in on a strategy meeting and understand what was being discussed. And I also never wanted to get too far away from the creative that I couldn't sit in on a creative meeting and understand what was being discussed. So I intentionally attacked what I felt like at the time were my weaknesses. And then once I felt like I started getting stronger on the executive side and I hadn't spent a lot of time acting or auditioning or writing, then I'm like, oh, I'm getting a little weak in this area. I got to get back in there. And so now uh, I'm very intentional with my time, and every single day I make sure that I'm doing something that feeds both sides of my brain. Some days I only get to write for 10, 15, 30 minutes, and that's all I get in that day. But I'm very intentional that there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not doing that. There's days where I'm doing a lot of creating and I need to spend time on the business development executive side. I make sure that there's time that I'm sitting down reading, it's time that I'm sitting down exploring, and I just make sure that I'm doing, that balance. It's like an exercise routine. I make sure I'm doing arms, legs, you gotta mix it up to stay balanced.
That's really, yes, tough. Because attacking your weaknesses is tough. Like,
Vulnerable.
you can't just wake up and do that. Did you ever feel like you had to prove yourself to anybody in any sort of way? Like, once you started getting into the business, did you ever feel like you had to prove yourself as an executive?
Honestly, um, I've kept a high expectation of myself that that's always what I'm chasing. Because if I get too caught up in other people's opinions or perceptions, I'm never gonna win, right? Like they can always change. The person that I'm working with may change. The person that I'm working for may change. Where I'm at may change. My title, since I've been here, my title has been tweaked and it's changed. But I'm never chasing that. You know, I my title could change tomorrow. I'm still gonna pursue, the version of myself that I think is best. And that's really where a lot of my mentality is rooted is I have a version of my best self that I'm going after, and I just go after that. I really don't get too caught up in, cuz once I do, I'm not going to sit here and act like someone else's opinion has that right. Like I'm not impervious to, outside opinions and thoughts. But the moment that I'm thinking too much about something I might have heard, or I'm worried too much about somebody else's opinion, or even sometimes an email, I might read an email and I'm like, what did they mean? But you know, the moment I feel myself going too far down that path, if I don't just call that person and gain clarity, I just got to get back. Like, however they meant that, if they meant that to be short intentionally, if they meant that to insult me or throw a jab at me, I'm not even worried about that because that's not how I see myself, you know? And as long as I'm continuing to pursue that version of myself that I want to be, then, I can't get too caught up in that.
And how do you get to that point where you have tough skin?
Yeah.
Because for one, oh, there's so many layers to this. One, I keep bringing this up. You are the SVP. You are like top of the top in terms of what, up and coming, professionals
Yeah.
can see, right? For for people who are just starting out, it's like, well, of course, opinions don't bother you. Like, you're you.
Yeah.
But you started from somewhere too.
Yeah.
And how did you get to that point where, hey, I can't let this bother me
Yeah.
because I have a job to do. And that even goes far back into the creative aspect of being an
Yeah.
actor. We sit
Yeah.
in front of directors' faces all day long while they tear us apart 20 ways to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get to the point where you stand in whatever you got and it's just like, I'm presenting, I'm here, and if somebody has something to say about it, they can send me a text.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the honest answer is that it's I'm now hardened from my experiences, and not hardened as in jaded, but now I'm battle tested. I've been through enough times. There's been jobs early when I was producing, and I was like, yeah, this is about to be it. This is gonna be the last time I want to ever do this. This is gonna be the last time I ever do this, job. There was times acting where I was like, oh man, I'm never getting another audition with this person again. Like there was times where the moment after I felt down, I felt beaten up, I felt kicked. And the most important thing, and I want everybody, that gets to watch this or hear this, is like you can't stay there too long. Even if it's true, even if you completely messed up, even if you completely ruined a project, even if you completely forgot something. I never forgot something, but even if you forgot something that was said or broke something or something just horrible happened, you can't stay there. You can't stay in that space because it only gets deeper and darker and sadder. So even when something bad happened, even when there was plenty of people that have had negative things to say about me or negative opinions, but I can't spend my time there too long because that's just a negative space. So when I've been down, when I've felt like I was, wrong, or if I felt like I did something that wasn't to my expectations, I had to go back to where I was before that moment. And whenever I talk to my friends, I always tell them like, if you met the version of you 5 years ago, they would love to be in your position right now. And that's something I just kept reminding myself every single step of the way. I still have my first ever headshot, and it's not a good headshot. Like it's something that a friend took for me. They had like 10 minutes, but it was the first thing I had. And I look at that picture and I think about how excited I was in that moment. I think about how happy I was to have a headshot and how that was my start. And so you just have to keep reminding yourself, like, if the you from 5 years ago saw you right now, they would do anything to be in your position. And you just have to keep thinking that way. The version of me 5 years from now wouldn't think that the version of me today would exist. So you just have to keep reminding yourself where you've come from and where you want to go.
I actually think about that a lot. Whenever I'm beating up on myself or I'm like, I question myself, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm not where I want to be yet. I
Yeah.
think about where I was and I'm like, okay, but if you really think it through, the girl from 4 years ago would have thought I was so cool. So, it's okay.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be where you are. I think I actually saw a couple clips. Dochi would say the same thing.
Hmm.
She would say, allow yourself to be bad at what you do for a little bit, especially if you're just starting out,
Yeah.
because how does anybody grow if you don't fall a couple times,
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually have a chat question.
Oh, let's go, chat.
So here we go, chat. It said, what challenges do you face separating your ideas that work for your label job with an artist versus what could work in your federal film world?
Oh yeah, that's great. So, with federal films, our aim is to always find that synergy between an artist project or an artist vision and outside projects that we may have being pitched to us in federal. And so not always do they align. And sometimes it's hard because you may have a vision like, yo, if we if we did this like this, it would be great. I think it would work. It would be amazing. This place already said it would be cool. This streamer already said it would be cool. But then you bring it to an artist and it doesn't match their vision. And so you have one or two options, right? You can either lean more into the version of this that matches their vision and see how it works, or it might not be right for that artist. And you can respectfully say, okay, I understand this probably isn't best. There's ideas that I've had that I thought were amazing 5 years ago. Like literally, I was like, this is great, right? But I got some feedback that was like, yo, it's cool, but it's not ready. And for a minute, it wounded me, right? Because I spent a lot of time working on this project. But then I took my own advice and I said, okay, where does it need to be? Where do I need to go? How do I advance it? And so I just started taking some of the advice. I'm like, worst case scenario, and this is why I suggest to all creatives, if you ever get a piece of feedback or note that you disagree with, but you have to do it, just do it. Because if it doesn't work, it's going to be very, very clear. If there's an edit that needs to be made that you 100% disagree with, if there's a change or a creative direction that you're like, y'all, this is not going to work. The best thing you could do is show that it doesn't work. Not like, tainted or tamper with it. Do exactly what you've been asked to do. And then if it doesn't work, it'll be glaringly clear. Or there's times where you do something that you're like, this is not going to work at all, and it becomes something amazing. And in more cases than not, just leaning into that thing that you don't want to do will either show you that you really shouldn't be doing it, or it'll be like, actually, I think I can be in the middle on this.
You know what? And I have a question based off of that. Have you ever come to a creative difference, let's say with an artist or their team, and however the chips fall, they decided to go in the direction that you maybe didn't suggest?
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Do you feel like you still stand in your decision that like I still think I'm right, or did that help expand your kind of creative vision for what something could be?
You have to let things play out sometimes, and really most of the time you have to let it play out, because you could put your foot down and put a hard stop right now if it's something that you're like, this goes against all my principles, this just does not feel right. Sometimes you have to recuse yourself from a project. Sometimes you have to be like, hey, I might not be the right person for this, and that's probably the most mature thing that you can do, and the project can go on without you and it could be successful. That's fine. I think the biggest thing is like, not everything is going to be a win. Not every single thing is going to be a home run, right? To use a sports reference, like sometimes there's some bunts, sometimes there's a single, there's double, there's triple. Sometimes you get thrown out. Like, you're not going to win every single time. Sometimes the project just doesn't work, and the more you beating your head on it, you're making it worse for the future relationship. If I'm just beating it over the head with this artist because I disagree, yeah, the project might get done and it might get done exactly how I wanted it to, but the chances of them working with me again are very, very slim. And vice versa. If I'm just getting abused on something and I'm just taking it instead of removing myself when I could have just taken myself out of the situation, now I'm making it worse for me to work with that person again. So you got to pick and choose your battles. Not everything is going to be a win, and not every loss is a L, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, completely. Sometimes, things that are the best feeling are, growing points. And at least for up and coming professionals, it's really important to constantly remind ourselves, like, hey, didn't work out, but that doesn't mean it's a failure,
Yep.
or
Yep.
it's not something that I can't come back from. Now, from everything that I've heard from you thus far, it seems like your life is really saturated with a lot of film and creative on all sides of life.
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself level and balanced? Because I know for me, sometimes, hey, I love music. I listen to music every waking hour of my life. I come into the office, I do my thing, I go home, I listen to music. But sometimes it gets to be too much,
Yeah.
especially when I'm working on a particularly difficult project that week or whatever. So, what do you do to keep yourself from essentially hating it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No, that's a great question. Usually after a music video shoot, a music video could be 12, 14, 60, 18, 20 hours, depending on what's going on that day. Sometimes when I
That's a
leave a
lot.
shoot, yeah, sometimes I gotta just go home in silence, right? I just have to, and even if you know, I'm loving every hour of that, even if the shoot went perfect, I still just need to like decompress. So I
Mm.
actually spend a lot of time in silence, because everything is like a meeting, a Zoom, a call, a text, a deck, reading or writing. So I give myself time in silence. I don't really, I it's intermittent. Like sometimes I will listen to music while I'm driving, but when I'm in the car, that's the time that I get to have a lot of like free thoughts. So sometimes I'll just sit in silence. Sometimes I'll just go take a walk, because you touched on it perfectly, which is like, people think being a creative is that you have to be creative all the time. So it's like, I'm gonna do something on the weekend, I'm gonna go to an art gallery, which you should go to art galleries. You should get that inspiration, but you don't have to go to an art gallery every weekend. Then it's like, okay, a meeting gets done. I should start sketching, or I should start, looking at paint samples. Sometimes you just have to go outside and walk and just look, and you might see a
Touch
hue.
grass.
Exactly. You might see a hue of green that just sparks your mind off into, our minds are very complex. We need the littlest of input to create entire, universes in our mind. And so if you're forcing yourself to try to be creative all the time, eventually is going to lead to a level of burnout. So I do, the best to schedule things that I go do that have nothing to do with creative at all. Like there isn't a single thing I'm not drafting, I'm not storyboarding, I'm not workshopping, I'm not writing. I'm just existing and being. Sometimes it might be golf, sometimes it might be going and coaching my sons in sports, sometimes it might just be, going outside and riding on a skateboard. Like I have to make sure, especially when you start feeling that build up inside of you, you got to go do something completely different. You got to go do something that you wouldn't even thought of. You may hate operas. Go sit at the opera. Go challenge yourself to go sit at the opera, right? There's something in there that you're gonna receive that's gonna come. There's some note you're gonna hear. There's some visual that's gonna be put in front of you. There's something that's gonna hit you either consciously or subconsciously that at some point it's going to come back around. So I always encourage people and myself to do things that don't feel like they have to be creative or business minded or anything but just being Devon.
Absolutely. Oh, and that really reminds me of this book. I reference this book, promise you, probably all the time. I know everybody who's watching this who knows me is going to be tired of hearing me say this. But there's this book called The Creative Act, and it's
Mm-hmm.
by Rick Rubin. It is so good. And in The Creative Act, they talk about how creative energy is kind of around all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you have to just be open to, to kind of touch back on what you said. People think that you being a creative is something that you have to be, right? Like you have to be creative, and I'm either more or less creative than the person next to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I'm learning is that what it means to be a creative is to just be open to the inspiration that's around me, whether I find it in a place where I'm expecting or a place that I'm not, and when I do need to take a step back from being around music so much, sometimes I find, inspiration in a book
Yeah.
or a coffee shop, or yeah, I'm taking a walk, and you hear something, you pick up on a conversation, you experience real human life around you, and it inspires you to create because art imitates life. Um, yeah. So kind of bouncing off of that, do you have any rituals or anything that like really grounds you
Yeah.
to stay level?
So, every morning, the first thing I do is just express gratitude and you know like I'll take some time to meditate, pray, and just do my best to just not immediately jump into whatever's happening. you know in an ideal world, I wish I could just sit still for an hour and just do nothing. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, but that's like the most immediate thing that I have to do to start my day is I just sit down, be still. I'll pray, I'll meditate, I'll just, express gratitude for where I'm at and what's going on every day. Like I just take time to take stock in that. And then I'll do a little bit of a reading. Sometimes I have a daily devotional, sometimes it might be a book. There's a bunch of different books that I like to read. And then I'll get into whatever's happening the rest of the day. But I just like to start my day immediately with a moment of gratitude, like taking stock and where I'm at, and then everything else just kind of comes after that. I always say like you should front load the things that are most important to you. So that mindfulness that I talk about, that's something that's important to me. So I have to start my day with that, and then you know, if I have a workout that day, then I have to work out. Like I have to take care of those things that's important to me right at the top of the day. then after that, I can go fulfill all my other roles. Then I could go be a husband. Then I could go be a dad. Then I could go be a friend and an executive and like all those other things I need to be in that day. But if I don't start with the things that's most important to me, then it's like my whole day feels off. And then I realize like, oh, I just jumped out of bed today. I didn't even take my moment.
And that's real. You gotta have kind of those moments of stillness that because when you start the day, you start the day, and you just go. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's no end until your head literally hits the pillow. So I understand that it's really important to mark out that time that is just for you, that you don't have to commit to anybody else except you and
Yeah.
your peace. We do have another chat question.
Chat.
This is for our interns and post grads. They want to know, do you have any advice for interviewing for a job or an internship?
Oh yeah. You have to be the most prepared, well read, investigative person when you walk in. Um, when I first interviewed for Republic, I knew the birthdays of everybody I was talking with because there was a couple of people that had just had birthdays. So I was like, "Oh, I saw you had a birthday. Happy birthday!" I wasn't even like being a creep about it, but I did my research. So I researched who I was talking to, what their positions were, what some of their backgrounds were. I researched the company. Like I researched Universal Music Group. I researched Republic, and I go to the About Us tab. And every interview I've ever had, I've gone to the About Us. For one, for me, I wanted to make sure that what this company was talking about aligned with who I am and who I want to be. I wasn't just coming in there looking for a job. I wanted to make sure what they're talking about on the website aligned with who I want to be. And then whoever I was meeting with, I made sure I looked up what they were working on. I made sure I looked up what type of projects they've done in the past, their background, anything I could do to give me an advantage of that conversation. And the other thing is I would have notes, and I have my notebook with me that I take everywhere. I had notes of the bullet points of where I wanted the conversation to go, especially an interview. If you are coming into that situation and you want to be there, then you need to have your points. You need to find ways to work it into the conversation. Hey, I looked on the website and I saw that you guys are about XYZ. That's something I've always been passionate about. Like, make sure you hit that point. Boom, you cross that off. Make sure you come in and you express what your interests are. And I saw this on the website and I noticed that you guys could be doing XYZ. Like, come in with your points already laid out. If you can hit all of them, great. And come in well researched, well prepared.
Stay ready so you don't got to get ready.
Exactly.
Now, I want to know, what is one thing that you think really differentiates somebody who will have a short stint in a professional career versus real longevity in the industry? As a professional, as a creative, what is one thing that maybe you've learned about yourself or you've seen in other professionals that you're like, this is the one thing that everybody needs to have if they intend to be here for a while?
A clear definition of who you are. And it evolves and it changes, and I hope that in my life that I continue to find ways to get better. But you have to have a clear definition of who you are in every room that you step into. That's not confidence, that's not arrogance. That's just real self-actualization. Like, who you are, you know who you want to be, and you could just never lose that because so much else around you could change in any industry. There's not a single industry that I could think of that has remained the same since its inception. Every single industry, every single job, every single position, every single corporation has changed. So if you define yourself based off of your circumstances, you're just gonna always be, undefined. But if you come in and you know who you are and who you want to be, that's the thing that should never change. It should only evolve. And every successful person I've had the opportunity to meet with, every successful creative, every person that you can imagine that you think about, that doesn't mean that they don't have fears or worries or insecurities. But the one consistent thing that I notice is they all seem to have a very clear definition of who they are.
How important is that confidence factor? Like, let's say you know yourself, but you're scared
Yeah.
to be yourself openly. How important is it that you are also very expressive and present in who you are?
You know, we are all meant to be different. And the moment you start attempting to be somebody else or a version of yourself that's not authentic, you're blocking something. You're blocking something else. You might be in a room, and there's been times that I've been in a room having a direct conversation with somebody, and then someone else who wasn't even a part of the conversation either finds me afterwards or on social media, or they shoot me an email and they're like, "Oh man, I really appreciated what you said and I just wanted to talk to you." And had I come into that situation attempting to impress that one person that I thought I was there to meet, or the one person I thought I was meant to impress, I would have been completely turning off the person who actually turned around and was like, "Hey, actually, I'm getting ready to go do this. I'm gonna be on this job for the next 6 weeks." So I'm sitting here trying to impress this person who's gonna hire me for a job tomorrow, or ultimately never hire me for anything, right? But the person that was off here on the side recognized that I was being authentic and I was being myself. And every opportunity that I've gotten has come from some level of me just being myself in that situation and being who I'm supposed to be in that situation. Once you start like overthinking and double thinking and trying to be this and trying to be that, you already lost. Even if you get the approval or whatever of that person that you wanted to be, now you got to keep being that inauthentic version of yourself to keep that person happy. That's tiring. That's a lot. I don't want to do that. This life is short. You just got to be you.
Yeah. It's a lot to one. I think what's complicated is that there are a lot of people who don't know themselves, at least not fully.
Yeah.
And what's tough about it is that maybe there's a subconscious knowing of who they are and they're not confident in that.
Yeah.
But because we also, one, work in the entertainment industry where you can't tell who is who, even if they think they know themselves.
Yeah.
You know, it's really easy to subscribe to putting on a face, you know, and using that as the protection, you know, but we're seeing more and more that that authenticity, being organic and being true to whoever you really are on the inside, it draws the right people around you. Um, so thank you for affirming that. I know a lot of professionals, myself included, really love to hear that as many times as we need to hear it.
Yeah.
We love to hear it. We have one more chat question from Tori Coleman.
Tori.
That is our very own Tori. How do you get back in touch with yourself if you find yourself a little lost?
That's a wonderful question. I do a lot of writing and journaling. And so you have to do a lot of like self-assessment. And it's important to write this down, and I hope everybody does this at some point soon. Is sit down and make two lists. Make a list of everything that you think you are, and then make a list of everything that you want to be. And then you need to look at them side by side and see, okay, this is everything that I say I am. I'm actually not that far from everything that I want to be. I'm actually doing all right. Or this is everything that I am and it's not even close to how I want to be. And you need to start figuring out what things you need to lose. There may be some things that you think you want to be that just you it's not realistic or it's not true to who you are. There may be things that that are simple, like, oh, I want to be, I want to be in shape, or I want to be a mindful person, or whatever. Then you got to look at yourself and say, like, what am I doing? So let's say you have 10 things, right? 10 things on this list of who you want to be. On every single one of those things, there should be an action attached to that. There should be something that you're actively doing to be that version of yourself. So a lot of times when I find myself down, when I find myself feeling a little lost or just going through the motions, and I go back and I look at that list, I have a list that's in my notebook, and I look and I see, wow, I haven't done anything to be mindful. I haven't done anything to take care of myself. I haven't done anything to be a better person. I haven't done anything to be a better creative. Usually those two moments attach to each other. When I'm not doing the things that I know will make me better, that's usually when I feel like I'm lost. And then the moment I start sitting down to write again and start getting with other friends and supporting my friends, somehow it always ends up getting me back in alignment. So I encourage you to make sure, again, like you have a healthy vision and definition of who you are, and make sure you're doing something every day to chase that version of yourself.
Beautiful. I really like that. Now, I have one final question. It's always my favorite question. But if you had to give yourself one piece of advice from before you joined the industry, if you had to look back at yourself before you got into entertainment, before any of it, what would that advice be?
Enjoy each moment, because you just really never know where that's going to end up in your story. Enjoy every single moment. It feels like some self help, uh, whatever, right? It sounds like some sugar coating or whatever, but you just got to
Like,
enjoy each moment. The hard times, enjoy them, because you know what? I wanted to be here. The hard times where you can't get there, enjoy it, because you know it's not going to last forever. The good times, when you finally get to see a project come to fruition, enjoy it for a moment. Enjoy all the work that you put into it. Don't be so quick to go to the next thing. When you get an opportunity, enjoy it. When you get a no, enjoy it. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to figure something else out. Like, just enjoy each moment. I wish that earlier in my career I enjoyed more of what was happening in the moment, because now I look back on it fondly. When I was struggling and going around door to door asking people to let me shoot content for them, I was learning and I was growing, and it made me battle tested and ready for today. So just enjoy each moment and take a moment for yourself.
that's, I really like that. Thank you for that. It reminds me of a quote I heard recently where someone said, it might be tough, but how lucky are we that I'm facing challenges, pursuing the thing that I love to do?
Absolutely. We're all
So
very
thank
fortunate.
you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed this time getting to talk and virtually meet each other. I'm grateful for everybody that tuned in and threw questions in, and I genuinely mean this. If anybody just you know would like a piece of advice, or even have advice for me, or if you got an idea, I'm always open to hearing it and having a conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing your wise wisdom. This was so fruitful. I really like this.
I enjoyed this. This was nice. This was nice. Thank you. Thank you. I thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you,
And thank you
AT24.
to everybody who
Yes.
jumped on, for viewing. Thank you for all of your
Yes,
questions.
yes, yes.
You know where we'll be. And thanks, guys. See you guys on the next one.